Well, I suppose, how did we come together? Well, John Ferguson, who will appear as we're speaking as we go on, he was a very young man. He went to Ireland and he came back very excited. And he says to me, talking to myself, probably first, he says, we've got to start a branch of Comhaltas in Leeds. It's the most amazing thing for Irish music. He was involved, you know, with people back there, and he thought, this is the future, this is what we want to do. We'll have to teach the children, get involved, and yeah, I wasn't so enthusiastic, to be quite honest. I didn't even join the committee initially, but I did after a few months. But John was so excited about it. We would eventually have formed a branch here, but not the same way as with his. I always give it to him. But we got together and we were very lucky, because we had a lot of enthusiastic people, and the people who came on the committee was exactly the sort of people you'd want on a committee. They worked together. They liked to be doing things. Believe it or not, arguments were not part of it. It was what you could do. And it was a wonderful time starting, and that was in October, wasn't it?
October 1969.
1969. That was when the first meeting was. And within 2 years, well, we were winning Junior Ireland champions, which was amazing. And that was all down to the people. They were all older. That's how I looked at them then, all those years ago. But they were older musicians, and they gave of their time. But John was the one who had the ideas. He had the ideas, and the backing was there for him. Yeah. So that's when we started, and that was the way we started, with that sort of enthusiasm.
Oh, it's like the cycle of life, isn't it? You know, you start off with one group of people, and you bring the juniors up, and they go off to university, and sometimes they come back, and sometimes they don't. And you have all these musicians that you train up, and certainly in the 1990s, when I was putting the shows on, well, doing it in the 80s, but in the 1990s, that's when we'd grown a fabulous group of musicians, and they were just so good. And we took shows to Ireland, and they blew everybody away. We were told that we were in a different league, basically. And I'm convinced that was down to a lot with the musicians. But of course, a lot of them then decided, I want to go and play in Ireland all the time. And we lost them bit by bit. And then, lo and behold, we had to more or less start all over again and work our way back up. So it's just roller coaster, circle of life. Anybody who's been a member of Leeds or a friend of Leeds Comhaltas still is sort of within the family of Leeds Comhaltas. That's one thing, Jackie, isn't it, that we've always wanted. And I think that was John Ferguson again. You know, he used to say, it's nice to be nice. You know, you don't want arguments and what have you, and the best way possible, work together, work as a big family. And certainly, I think the 50th anniversary weekend, which was October 2019, that just showed everybody who was there was so pleased to be there, and were just so delighted to see everybody else, and with people coming back from, years before that had been members, they still felt that they were part of Leeds. Even people who joined temporarily while they were at university, and we managed to discover their talents, and I would get them into the shows. That was it then. They're sort of like friends for life, basically. So we've been very fortunate in that, to be able to maintain that lovely family feeling.
Yeah, I would agree with Joe there, because one of the unwritten rules of the Leeds branch was that we would only ever have one branch in Leeds, because we felt that going to meetings around the country, if there was slight disagreements within the organisation, it was where there was 2 or 3 branches in the city. Just difference of opinion. I'm not saying anything desperate of that. So that was it. But the atmosphere within the Leeds Cultus movement was such that after all these years, the committee we have today, which is completely new, as you can imagine, modern people, but they're exactly the same. Exactly the same, the exact same approach to what can I do? Nothing is too much trouble. You ask somebody to do something, it's done.
Yes.
It is an amazing thing that's come right through the branch. And I think well, personally, that's one of the things I really look and think. I'm proud of that.
Just give you an idea what a Scurriact is. So it's a presentation, a stage presentation. There were 2 competitions, I think there still are. They used to be run at Ennis at the Fleadh, and then that stopped, which was a bit of a difficulty for us. We couldn't manage to fit in with the new timetable and what have you. But we competed as long as we could in Ennis. So there were 2 inter-branch competitions. One was the Scurriact, which is the one I'm involved with, and the other was the Playrica. And the Playrica would just be a nice half-hour show of lively music, singing, dancing, no particular theme, colourful, happy, and the Scurriact would be more of a drama, where you would tell a story and you would start the really good beginning and then go through a good middle and then an excellent ending, and you would weave all the music and the singing and the dancing as far as you possibly could to also tell the story. And Jackie was great, because he was, as you can tell from the way he can talk, he was recruited as our main storyteller, our Shanachie, and he carried some of the shows. He really did. When we didn't have any other actors, he would sort of take on that role and then either narrate or tell the story as we were going on. But the competitions were initially for your own branch. But some places in Ireland particularly, and certainly in England, found it difficult to get everybody they needed for a particular show. out of their own branch. So they brought in the rule where you could mix, you know, you could bring in people from other branches. And then we were delighted. We had 2 people who travelled from the Manchester area, not exactly Manchester, Greater Manchester area, and 1 person who travelled from Whitby up on the north coast to our rehearsals because they just so wanted to join us and be in our show, which we took as a huge compliment basically, and they were a great addition as well. So yeah, I think that's about it really. It's great. But I would get what help I needed. If I was struggling with an idea for something, I would get somebody else to give me an idea. That would be the best thing, you know, and then I could work on the idea and what have you. And we've had certain contributors over the years. Jackie's father was a writer, and he wrote several of our early shows. And our niece, she's great imagination and a very good actress, and she came up with some of our funnier shows. So those are the 2 main ones, and then it'd be me then just trying to get something together and what can we do, what haven't we done yet, you know. There'll always be something there you're trying to get. And then I would ask people to do certain jobs for me, so it would be me being the coordinator. Sometimes I wrote it myself, but my sister Mary, she would write stories for us. You know, I'd tell her what I wanted and she'd do the stories, and then I collate the whole thing together. So organise somebody to get the music started, tell them what I wanted. This is the kind of music we're looking for this section. I'd usually sort out the songs myself with the singers, get one of the dancers, the step dancers, to organise the routines, tell them what I wanted. Sometimes they were dressed up as jockeys, so in a sort of like pretend as if they were already if they were riding a horse kind of thing. And we had a horse race with just the jockeys there, and they were dancing across the stage and that kind of thing. And sometimes we had them dressed up in like hurling outfits, and they danced with the hurleys and the clash of the... So you try and get your dancing relevant to your story, because that would be the most visual aspect of the show, would be to get dancers dressed up in some shape or form, and doing something that looked like it was sort of like part of the action. So I think probably the most spectacular one was we danced the Battle of Clontarf, Good Friday, April 1014, I think it was, in the year of our Lord 1014, something like that, was part of the script. And we started off with 12 dancers doing the 4 sets of the Siege of Venice, and then they killed each other and they went off and died on either side. And now this could have looked absolutely terrible, but it did actually work. And then that dropped down to what was it, a 4-hand dance, and then by this time we were down to just step dancers only. Before we'd had ceilidh dancers and set dancers, but now we're down to step dancers. So they do a 4-hand reel, and then they drop that down to 3 as somebody else gets killed and goes off and dies. And then you ended up with...
A lot of blood in it.
There was, yeah. They ended up, mine, I think. They ended up with going from a reel to a fast hornpipe down to one person with a slow hornpipe, and the end of it, the sword went in the air. That was the battle of being won. So you use your dancers. It's such a visual thing. It's such a great thing. You can do it. Musicians have got to be part of the action. They're not just sitting there as musicians. They've got to be involved in what's happening. Because if they are, they look strange. They're not an orchestra. They are actually people who are part of the stage action, and they have to respond as such. So yeah, I got a name for telling people what to do, I'm afraid, but it all worked out well in the end. Huge, yeah. And that was one of the attractions, Jackie, wasn't it? Because before you'd have ceilidh bands and you'd have your top 10 musicians, and like that was it. They were the ones. You open it up to Scurriot, you've got people who can just do group dancing, people who are good on stage, you've got people who can paint scenery, you've got people who can make costumes. All of a sudden, loads more people are involved, and it's a good trick. It's a good thing to have.
It possibly was, I think you would agree with me, Joe, one of the things that contributed to the fact that by the time the Leeds branch got to 50 years, it was as vibrant as it was at the start because of the shows. It brought as Joe just said, whatever talent you had, you brought it there. And of course it was everybody getting together and going to Ireland. That was the big thing. And it was such a happy time,
Well,
wasn't
it's
it?
a happy time.
But I would say that those shows, not possibly, definitely did contribute to where the branch is today. Yeah, because the wonderful thing about it is that all those young people down there now, and a lot of the ladies and that on the committee, it was going on before they were born, but they're now here, so much a part of it. But the shows were an amazing thing. Hard work
Oh, yeah.
for us, not for Jo. She made us work hard. No, it was Jo. Jo put in the work.
You've got to have a ringleader, don't you?
Yes, yes, you can have a boss.
Yeah. Well, the first one, the 50th anniversary weekend, it was legendary. You know when something's happening, and sometimes you think, oh, this is great, and you look back and you knew at the time this was going to be one of the weekends that you remembered for all time, kind of thing. And people were going around saying, isn't it wonderful? Isn't it great? Yeah, it is. Grasp it, enjoy every last little minute of it. But do you remember the night in Ennis after the last time we took a scurrier to Ennis, there was no competition for us. So they asked us if we would put it on at the local theatre, community theatre. It's called Glore in Ennis. It was a fabulous place, absolutely amazing. And we put the show on there on the Sunday night, which would normally have been when the scurrier competitions were held. But we didn't miss the competition at all. We were the only show there. There was some top musicians there in the first half, but we provided the second half. And the audience just loved us. They just couldn't believe what they'd seen. They were waiting to meet all the people off stage, in the foyer. The foyer was jammed, and we were supposed to clear the theatre by a set time, and you couldn't get these people out. They were just there waiting to see the stars. But it was just amazing.
She has a habit of doing that. She wasn't referring to me as a star.
But we went back to we were based at this particular pub, and I think a lot of us were staying there. But that night after that show in the theatre was unbelievable. Unbelievable. We started off with a 2-hour session of best traditional music, and we were joined by Seamus McMahona, who was sort of like an absolute legend in Comhaltas, and he's probably I don't know how well he is at the moment, but certainly he was at the time, he was absolute star. He'd been on stage himself, and he came to meet us afterwards, so he knew that we'd be having fun, and he knew we'd be playing music, and we were, and he was with us for 2 hours, and then at the end of the 2 hours, everybody kind of a bit, whoa, that was great, and then the next minute, one of our Jody Moran, one of our people that we acquired when he came to Leeds University, and he went away again, then he came back again, and he ended up working in the area, and he was our chairman for, was it 4 or 5 years, Jackie? So
Yeah, just
a while. Yeah. And then he moved to Australia, emigrated. But he was a great banjo player, fabulous singer, a really good set dancer. And he used to play the piano accordion. He went across and borrowed somebody's piano accordion, and he stood there with his mate Sean, who was he was one of the guys that travelled over from Manchester for our rehearsals because he'd been in our shows, and the two of them stood there and they started to sing song, and he sings and they kept it going, and they kept it going, and it started at about 1 o'clock, and when I left at 4:15, I wasn't well, and I went home early at 4:15, and they were still singing. But the funniest thing was that halfway through, they couldn't think of another song straight away, and they sang a hymn. It just kept it going. It was the most brilliant night
And we
ever.
all went to mass after.
No, we didn't.
I didn't mean to.
That was an excellent night. And then, of course, we've had, not that I've been involved in the when the Ceoil bands have been over in Ireland, and they never got placed, but just to achieve the All-Ireland competition was brilliant, and we were really proud of them. Michael Tennyson now, he's the main man for the Ceoil bands, and of course he was the one who I relied on so much when I took over the shows from John Ferguson. I think Michael was my musician that I went to organise the music for me and what have you. We trained a few others up in the meantime afterwards, but he was the original one, and certainly to this day, when I need any help or whatever, it's Michael I turn to. He's just an amazing guy, also a top quality musician as well.
Well, that is, I think, part of the question you asked, but we say other success. Well, John Ferguson, the man who started, he was 3 times All-Ireland champion. So was Michael Tennis.
John taught Michael, yeah.
Sean Gavigan, who we may meet here today,
John's
especially as a
nephew.
young lad.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of success with the duets and trios, All-Ireland winners.
We did, yeah.
So too many to go through. But I think it wasn't just the shows.
No.
The shows,
The
shows were
ones I
a
can
huge
talk
part
about.
in keeping us
Yeah,
together.
yeah.
But the individuals, the solos, the duets, yes, we did enjoy a good length, good success.
Yeah.
We did.
But we have music classes on a Tuesday night, and we have a session on the first Saturday of every month. So hopefully, the next one hopefully will be the first Saturday in July, but we'll have to wait and see how that goes, like everything else. And then obviously, the other thing would be the shows. The juniors now have their own show. They put shows together, and we sort of like do that on the sort of round about the first Sunday in December. We have an afternoon here, and the kids do a concert, and so that's been, I think it was about 4 years in a row now, which has been going until until we were stopped in our tracks last year. But yeah, they're sort of like taking on the tradition of the senior group of, presumably the teachers have all been involved in my shows, and then they want to do they put them on for the youngsters and what have you, and it's a great thing to see 60 kids on the stage there, and then them getting up and doing little pieces of acting and what have you, and stories and that. It's very good. Yeah, they obviously seen what the seniors have done and thought we can do that.
Yes, you would say that that it is busy. Obviously, there's a year now when we've forgotten about what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
But it is a busy branch. Yeah, still as busy as ever it was, which is good. It's good. There's a future there with the youngsters and the enthusiasm of the people on the committee and who are running it. We're very lucky. Very lucky.
nice yearly newsletter, which is not just limited to members, it's to former members and friends and what have you, so that we're trying to keep the family in touch, basically. So, and then over the years, John Ferguson did the first branch recording, which was on a little audio cassette. It's called Music in Exile, which was brilliant. And then a CD produced to celebrate I think it was the 35th anniversary, was it, Jackie? I think so. And that was called, what is that called? We Are the Music Makers, I think that's what it was called. That was from that. We Are the Music Makers, We Are the Dreamers of Dreams. It was taken from that. And then for the 50th anniversary, we produced another CD. So that
We've had them here from radio,
we've had Kieran Hanrahan and
a few times.
Kaylee House.
Serpent Brown.
Yeah.
Brown. Yeah.
They came over for both of the CD launches.
Yep.
Yeah, and it was great to have them. Really good. Yeah. So.
Great memories. Yeah. Great memories. Yeah, of all those years, and unfortunately we've lost a lot of people because of age and one thing and another like that. That happens. Life
Age and
goes
immigration.
on. Yes, immigration going the other way. That was strange. Strange. You did hit our branch. Immigration actually hit our branch in Leeds.
Big time.
It sounds stupid, but it did.
And
But we survived.
Yeah, you can't even say they went back to Ireland because they were born here.
Some of them were born here.
A lot of them were
quite a lot
born here.
of them were born here.
We passed on that love of Ireland and love of the music.
I think that's
We
one of
passed
the
that
things that people, a huge amount of people, as you can imagine, as we're talking with their families and the children and the music, have been involved. But people who have been on the outskirts, of the branch, they've got great enjoyment. And when they talk about what the branch did, they talk in terms of, well, you gave them something. You gave them a love of their country. You gave them an understanding. And one of the things John started was a thing called Cura, which helped the young people to understand A, where the music came from, B, what it meant, not just playing a tune, but the background. And a lot of people who haven't been involved with the Comhaltas in Leeds would be aware of it. I always say, we are delighted with you because he gave so much. He gave so much to so many people and made them realise the good things of Ireland. So that's one of the pluses as far as I'm concerned. After something like this, you say, well, cover this, cover that. But to cover the life, 50 years of what has been a very successful branch, and it's very hard. You don't do it in a short while. But I think that's wonderful to be able to say that we cannot cover.
Jassen